Today we're continuing with our series Small Book, Big Impact. And last week I introduced you to my latest book, Small Book, Big Impact. And today I'm going to be talking about the Ruth test. Does your book measure up to the Ruth test? Because the book, Small Book, Big Impact, 10 Success Tips from the book of, inspired by the book of Ruth to write books that change lives. That book is out. It is still on the Amazon bestseller list. And today I'm going to have a very short episode. We're talking about books that are small and books that will impact lives for generations. And I want to encourage you to write a small book that will have a lasting impact, like the book of Ruth. So, does your book pass the Ruth test? Today, I'm going to ask you a number of questions to see if it does. And then, as you write, you are going to adjust what you do. So, stay tuned to this very brief masterclass for today.
Let's welcome C. Ruth Taylor. Her mission is to raise up 10,000 winning Caribbean entrepreneurs by 2030, to ensure fewer books die in the minds of their authors, that more manuscripts become published legacies, and precious lives are transformed with the turn of every page.
All right. So the first thing, as we look at this Ruth test, is your book small? And by small, I mean if you're looking at a letter size page that is between 40 to 50 pages, you're looking at a formatted page, it's 100 to 150 pages. You're looking at also in terms of word count, it can be, say, between 10,000 or a little under 10,000 to 25,000, 30,000 words. Is it part of an anthology or is it by itself? You know, you have to have more words, at least 10,000 words when you format it so that you can have some kind of spine, or else if you are limited on words, you have to do it like a children's book whereby you have fewer words on a page, or you use images to make up, or it's just going to be an ebook. All right. So it's not a booklet. So that's the first thing. If your book is going to pass the Ruth test, it needs to be small. The second test in terms of the Ruth test is, does your book have timeless relevance? Ruth is a memoir. There are some nonfiction books, when you write them, each year you have to update them because there are changes in the world. If you're writing on a particular subject matter, say the subject matter is technology, technology is always changing. Things are changing. And so you have to make adjustments. So you will find some books like What Color is Your Parachute? That's not a small book, but I use it as an example that you have to update it every year. At least Dr. Bowles used to update it every year because things change. My book, Entrepreneur Secrets, I put some prices in there for different services. Chances are maybe in the next 3 years, those prices will change. And so when you're writing a nonfiction book, if you want to write a Ruth-like book that will have a big impact and change lives for generations, you have to write it in such a way that 10, 20 throughout the copyright lifetime of the book, it has relevance and the content doesn't constantly need upgrading. So, because Ruth is about a love story, it's about a tragedy turned triumph, it's about lost love, legacy. That kind of story and scenario is something that people will resonate with for thousands of years. And so Ruth has timeless relevance, written over 2,000 years ago, and it is still impacting us. What kind of book can you write that will have timeless relevance? One of those is your story. your own story. So stories do that. That's why fiction books continue to sell. That's why Chronicles of Narnia still matter today. Poetry also has that effect. There is no timeline on it. It's timeless, relevant. So if you're going to write a Ruth like book, and if your book is going to pass a test, you want to write about issues and subject matters that continue to be relevant from generation to generation. That's why, for example, the Bible, as long as it was put together, this quote unquote archaic book is still relevant and still impacting lives today, of which Ruth is one of those books, is because the issues are timeless. It's about relationships. It has teachings that surpass, the era or the generation. And so if you're going to write a small Ruth like book, bear that in mind. What I'm writing something that I have to keep revising, or is this something that will resonate with readers across generations? So that's the second test. The first one is small, the second one timeless relevance. Does it is it something that can build an enduring legacy, meaning something that can be passed on from one generation to the next, that when your family wants to market this book or to use this book, they can easily see how this book will apply, so that you're not writing about an issue that only you are passionate about, and after you are gone, nobody can relate to it. So if your book is going to pass the Ruth test, you want to write about something that um and write the book in such a way that somebody else picking it up, whether it's a company or your family, when they pick up this book, they can still market this book for long after you are gone. Can your book find community? That's another test. The book of Ruth is read annually at the festival of Shavuot. I think that's what it is called. Pardon me if I mess up the pronunciation, but there is a particular festival, a cultural practice, an event that every year this book is read. So there's a community factor built in. So can your book find community? Your book should, because you want to write for a particular audience. And so that's one of the keys. Are you writing about a particular audience? Does your book also give hope? That to me is one of the Ruth tests. That kind of book that we have there is a book that gives hope, and it's a book that gives lessons that can be passed on. So when you go to read the book of Ruth, you can find lessons there in terms of relationships. You can find lessons in terms of how to treat people. Does your book pass the Ruth test in terms of how does it inspire? So the book of Ruth, when you read it, it is inspiring. The story is inspiring. The story is uh, insightful. You're learning about the culture. When I read the book of Ruth as well, there are things that can draw from it that can be applicable in the reader's life. So if your book is going to pass the Ruth test, you have to check adaptability, you have to check what lessons are there. So you write with intent. What lesson do I want the readers to walk away from? Does your book have a transformational impact? If you are writing a Ruth like book, you want to write something that will have a transformational impact. And the book of Ruth does that, right? What else is there? Uh, well, one of the tests of Ruth is that, well, the author is unknown. What that says to me is that, and your book may not be like that, but what the principle we can get is that you don't have to be a big name author for the book to be impactful. Somebody else can write it for you. I wouldn't call it a Ruth test, but I'm just throwing that in there, that for some of you who want to have your story told, that someone else can put it together for you. Just tell it to them, because the book of Ruth, the author is unknown. Somebody wrote it, somebody captured it. And so, in terms of the Ruth test, the big test I'm saying, is it small? Is what you're writing about timeless? Does it have timeless relevance? Are there lessons? Is it inspirational? Is it something that you have to continue to update from time to time? The book of Ruth, you don't have to do that. The other test is that you just can write a story about a specific incident in your life. It doesn't have to cover everything. So it's a memoir. So the book of Ruth is a memoir. So you can write a memoir, or you write about an issue that people can learn lessons from. And the final one is community. Can a community pick up your book and run with it? Is there an event that can be tied to your book to keep it relevant and to keep it going? So the book of Ruth is read every year at a festival. What could you create so that your book would pass the Ruth test? Not just timeless, inspirational, but a community can take it and run with it. Does your book lead to transformation? Like I shared in the book, and I think I shared it last week, that this book, I'm reading it, it is shaping how I do my publishing. It is shaping my values. It is shaping my business. Does your book have that kind of transformational impact? The story that you are telling, are there lessons in there that when you read it, it can make your life better? Right? So, having read your book, how will it make the lives of the readers better? If your book does these 7 things, I wasn't counting, but it's about 7, then I believe it will pass the Ruth test. So remember, small book, big impact. Your book doesn't have to be long to be relevant, to have timeless relevance. Your book doesn't have to be long to be transformational. And whatever kind of book you're writing, even if it is a teaching book, put a little story in there. Share a little bit of your story, because that is what will connect and resonate with the readers. So I trust that you found this episode insightful and inspiring, and it will help you on your own journey. I'm going to close with some questions and an affirmation. This is the affirmation from the book Small Book Big Impact. And remember, it's only $2.99. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, all over. Type in C. Ruth Taylor, look for the book, and you will find it. So here's the affirmation for today on our small book challenge. My story matters, and it deserves to be shared no matter who writes it. So say that with me. My story matters, and it deserves to be shared no matter who writes it. And so here are my questions to you. What story or message do you feel compelled to share, even if you're not the one to write it? Who could help you to share, to bring this story to life? How can you overcome the fear of not being good enough to write and publish? Think of a book that impacted you, even though the author wasn't famous. What resonated with you? And finally, how can you ensure that your story reaches the audience it's meant to inspire? A Ruth Light book finds community and is timeless. That's it for today. Go penny two in it and dominate entrepreneurship. Ta for now. Until next time, I have to rush off to a training. That's why we're doing this earlier, but I don't want to miss a session. So catch you next week, God willing. Ta.